On today's show, we're going to take a look at 5 players I have picked out that I think need to go a step above where they currently are for the Falcons to go on a true playoff push. Because right now, Atlanta at 5-6 is currently in the playoff picture, but if you're going to finish below 500, that's not a good bank or a good bet to make that you're going to finish in the playoff picture. So with that being said, let's run through my 5 players that need to step up for Atlanta. Starting with, no real surprise here, quarterback Desmond Ridder. If the Falcons are serious about going on a run, they are going to need better play out of Desmond Ridder, who this season has thrown for 1,900 yards, 7 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a handful of fumbles as well. To be specific, 6, 7 fumbles. He's got 15 turnovers or so. Listen, Ridder has shown that he wants the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter, right? How many times have we seen a option play in the fourth quarter where Desmond Ridder holds on to it and he gallops into the end zone? Like, the guy's a gamer. The guy wants the ball in his hands. He wants the last shot. And that's great to see as a coach and as a fan because it shows a lot of confidence in your quarterback to make big-time plays in the fourth quarter. Now we just got to get some duct tape on his hands and put it on the football because he has this horrible fumbleitis and interception problem where he just goes colorblind in between quarters 1 and 3, and he coughs up the football in key moments. I mean, 5 turnovers in the red zone. Now, you can put the botch snap maybe on the center a little bit, but ultimately 5 turnovers or 4 turnovers in the red zone is just 4 too many, right? Maybe you can get away with 1 or 2 interceptions throughout the course of a season in the red zone, but he's already doubled his allotment, and we're not even at Christmas yet. So no, we need to see better quarterback play from Desmond Ridder because I just don't think that you can skate by for 17 games with the way Ridder has played and truly be a playoff team. Yeah, you can probably eke out some ugly wins. You get some good games, and that can get you to 5-6, maybe 6-5. But I don't think that's going to work throughout the course of a 17-game season. Ridder simply has to be better. You know this. I know this. Everyone in Flowery Branch knows this. The question is, will we get better play out of number 9 for the rest of the season? Now, what is your confidence level in Desmond Ridder taking Atlanta to the playoffs? Scale it 1 to 10. 10 being that you would put the mortgage on it, that Desmond Ridder is going to take this team to the dance, or 1 being you don't see a way in hell that the Falcons end up in the playoffs as long as Desmond Ridder is this team's quarterback. Second guy I need to see step up is Kyle Pitts. Now, this is a tough conversation because on one hand, there is a group of people that want to put all the blame on Arthur Smith, saying he's not being used correctly, right? He's a Ferrari and they're leaving him in the garage. And on the other hand, there's a simple acknowledgement that whether you were taken 4th overall or 24th overall, we need to see better numbers. Like, there's a certain line in the saying where we go, we just have to get results, right? And for a few weeks, we can get by with maybe an injury or 2 or maybe just not good play calling. But, guys, it's week 13 now, and he's got 37 grabs for 441 yards and 1 touchdown. Like, at what point do we go, this is just not enough? Now, this past Sunday, Kyle Pitts saw the fewest amount of snaps he has seen at any game this season. 31 snaps against the Saints in Week 12. Only played 50% of the game compared to the last game where he played 70% of the snaps. And then Week 9 against the Vikings, 57%, 60%, 52%. So it hasn't been a very clean distribution. It's not like it's slowly going downhill from the start of the year. He was playing more in the beginning of the season. So if your argument is, yeah, but the knee injury last year, he wasn't quite 100%. Well, he played more in weeks 1 through 4 than he did last week, so I don't really buy that. Now, maybe the game just got away from Arthur Smith, right? Maybe they just weren't good packages, and the Saints, who have really good linebackers, right? Our producer today, Trace Gerard. I like Saints Gerard a little bit more, though. He knows, like Davis. Like, they got good linebackers down in the Big Easy and good safeties. Maybe just did not create a good matchup for Kyle Pitts, but 50%? Like, you use the 4th overall pick on a guy and you go, you know what? Half of the time I want you standing by me on the sideline. That's just not very good usage. I don't have the answer, though, as to why Pitts is not being utilized more. My initial reasoning was last year, him and Marcus Mariota had no downfield chemistry. And Kyle Pitts is a downfield threat. That's what he did at Florida, and that's why Atlanta took him in the top 5, the first tight end ever selected that high. But now we are way past Mariota days here in ATL, and I still don't understand what the issue is. I think there's definitely a Kyle Pitts problem. I think there is he might not be as good as we all want him to be, but the reality is it's a clusterfuck, right? I mean, you took him 4th overall, and he's playing 50% of the snaps in a must-win game against your biggest rival. Doesn't that seem like a good opportunity to lean on your stars, which they did in Bijan and London, but not so much for Pitts? So maybe that gives you a good idea as to what Arthur Smith views in Kyle Pitts moving forward. But the point I want to make here is Kyle Pitts, he needs to step up. Now, before we get on to the rest of my players, I do want to tell everyone about our awesome sponsor today, Prize Picks. What is Prize Picks? It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So for Thursday Night Football, here are my selections. I'm taking the less on Geno Smith's passing yards. I just think Dallas's defense will be too good for Geno. However, I do like the more on CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard's yards. And then finally, if Geno can't finish drives for touchdowns, how about the more on Jason Myers, the Seahawks kicker, at 1.5 field goals? Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. The link for that is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Third player I'm going to call out is Bud Dupree. He wasn't a marquee free agent signing, but I think Terry Fontenot thought he might get the last little bit of football juice out of Bud Dupree after a failed 2-year stint in Tennessee. But when you compare Bud Dupree's numbers against second-year guy Arnold Ebiketie, rotational outside linebacker Lorenzo Carter, 36-year-old Calais Campbell, he's not really shining all that much, right? Bud Dupree's got 3 sacks, and I mean, when you look at the PFF grades this year, now PFF is not the end-all be-all, but they're not dramatically off usually, and he's ranked 98th out of 106 outside linebackers. 98th. That's bad. It's not good. Overall grade, 49.4. I always add 10 to PFF grades for a school letter grade. That's a 59. That's failing. That's failing not by a lot. Pressures, 21. Sacks, 3. I mean, this is what Atlanta was looking for at the trade deadline. This is why they wanted Montez Sweat. They wanted depth at the edge position, plus Sweat could offer some long-term security at the position. But more importantly, for this year alone, depth at depth at edge for a playoff push, and now they need that out of Bud Dupree because there is no one else coming through the door to save the season. They passed on adding Derek Barnett on the waiver wire. They did not bring in Jason Pierre-Paul. There's really no other edge rushers out there. So it is who do you have in your locker room? Like, this is your room. This is your roster. It is up to these guys. There is no one else going to walk through the door to save the day. So Bud Dupree, you got to dig deep. We got to get more numbers, more production, more sacks, more pressures, more of everything out of you. Because as the veteran pass rusher, you know what it's like to play at the end of the year. You have been on a Pittsburgh Steelers team that went to the playoffs. You know what it takes to go on a postseason run to make a playoff push. And so now young guys like Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter, who haven't had that kind of experience, they're going to lean on you, and you got to come up with some big plays in some of these last few games. Now, speaking of playoffs, if we get to enough subscribers, we're going to be able to do a playoff watch party. Unfortunately, we have not been able to do as much watch parties as I would have hoped for here, but we need more subscribers because more subscribers equals more studio space, and that means more watch parties. So help us continue to grow here. Let's get 35 subscribers so we can do a playoff watch party. Knock on wood, that one happens for Atlanta. Fourth guy I want to see step up is Jeff Okudah. The former top 5 pick out of Ohio State who Atlanta traded for has had a pretty average year. I wanted to say good, and it hasn't all been good. I mean, we've had some good moments from Okudah. I don't know if what I've seen out of him through the first 2/3 of the year is something that looks like Atlanta wants to extend. Now, another guy in the secondary that needs to step up is Richie Grant, Jesse Bates' running mate. I'm going to single out these two players because we need to see better play out of these two players. Jeff Okudah this year, ranking 86 out of 120 qualifying corners. Richie Grant, a bottom 10 safety, whereas Jesse Bates has been a top 3 safety. A.J. Terrell has been a really good, solid corner. I don't think he's looked like a top 5, maybe even top 10 corner, but he's not far off from those numbers. So you've got really good play between Terrell and Bates, and then their counterparts, Okudah and Grant, have not been very good. Playoff teams ultimately are not comprised of spotty QB play, which Atlanta has had, inconsistent run game, which Atlanta has had, and major holes on defense, which Atlanta has, right? They've got really good pieces in Bates and Terrell and Calais Campbell and Onyemata, but unfortunately, they do have some really big holes on their defense as well. You can probably get by with 2 of those 3 things, right? You could have spotty QB play, inconsistent run, but a great defense, and you might squeak into the postseason. Or really good QB play, but not a great ground game and not a really good defense, and the quarterback can take you the rest of the way. But if you go 0 for 3 on all 3 of those fronts, that's not the resume of a playoff team. And sure, Atlanta right now might be currently in the playoff picture, but we have seen how quickly this team can go downhill. I mean, we watched them lose to a 1-win Cardinals team, for crying out loud. So they have a lot of work to do. There is a lot of games left, and they need to improve on all 3 of these fronts. And all 3 of these fronts were identified and were recognized as players that need to improve and pick up their play moving forward. So who do you think needs to step up? I went through 5 players. Let me know who you think I might have left off my list that needs to pick up their game for the Falcons to go on a postseason push.